I grew up literally 13 steps above one of the best restaurants in North Georgia with my dad as the chef. I've always been around food. I was a chef professionally for 20 years.
A great French onion soup is just something to remember.
The day before my 33rd birthday, I started listening to some symptoms that I was having and was rushed to the local hospital. They did an endoscopy and found a tumor right at the junction of my stomach and my esophagus. In 2005, they took half of my stomach and half of my esophagus, but in 2011, they ended up having to remove all of it. So when I swallow, it goes straight to my intestine. With no stomach, it's hard for me to actually extrapolate the nutrition out of food. So I have to stay with high protein foods, low sugar foods. If anything, it's strengthened my love for food because my life is no longer about quantity of food, it's about quality of food. I want to be proud of the fact that whatever I just ate was something that I could 100% say I would be happy if that were my last meal.
Please welcome Hans Rueffert to the show. Thank you, Hans, for being here. Thanks for having me. And we have not talked on the show before about someone who's had to have their entire stomach removed, but almost more remarkably, 95% of your esophagus.
Yeah, that's wild. You know, when I went into surgery, I didn't know that I had cancer in my esophagus. So I actually woke up to the news that, hey, we had to remove half your esophagus. So it was a bit of a shocker to me as well. I had no idea that they were going to do that. I was wondering why was my back hurt. I knew they were going this way, but all of a sudden, you know, they go that way as well.
So what Hans is talking about here is, you know, initially he had to have, and correct me if I'm wrong, Hans, but essentially half of your esophagus was removed, right?
Correct, and then the upper half of the stomach as well.
So from here to here, approximately.
Correct.
Then you had to go back in 2011, have essentially almost all of your esophagus removed, all of your stomach, and then at that point in time, what you have to do is, this is, what you see here is his jejunum, that had to be pulled all the way up and connected to the very top part of your esophagus, this inner position here of the jejunum, which is the upper part of your small intestine. So, for the most part, you take a bite of food, it travels through what's remaining of your esophagus, 5% of it, and goes straight into your small intestine.
Yep, absolutely.
Did you have problems with trying to get nutrition? I mean, you were very thin in those photos with trying to get nutrition.
Absolutely. I went from 215 pounds down to 128 at my lowest, and was on a feeding tube essentially, had a J tube. You know, that was how I was getting most of my nutrition. And then definitely that was and still is one of my biggest concerns is gaining weight and maintaining weight. It's you know, most people are trying to lose weight constantly, and I'm the opposite. I'm trying to always gain weight. So.
Because you do not have the typical repository for food, so I'm assuming you more so nibble on food.
Absolutely, and I do graze all day long. High protein snacks, like things like nuts and those kind of things. I can't do sugary foods anymore because similar to people who've had gastric bypass, there's something called dumping syndrome, which is essentially food sort of moves too rapidly through your body, and you have almost like hypoglycemic shock. You know, so you get the shakes quite a bit. So I miss the sweets, but I have to stay away from them. But I still enjoy food every single meal, not just the act of eating it, but also sitting down with your friends and your family and sharing that sort of ephemeral. You know, it's almost this process of eating, not just the chewing and swallowing. It's the whole experience.
Huge social experience.
Absolutely. Even in the hospital, when I had 2 IV poles and NG tubes and was not allowed to eat or swallow anything, not even, you know, at one point it was only crushed ice. And that was 4 weeks after my surgery. Just to go into the hospital cafeteria, I mean, that's not the best food in the world. But just to be able to sit there with my family and watch them eat, to smell the foods, to see it being prepared, you know, it's that deep connection with food. Somebody asked me if I eat like a bird, which I said, no, I use my hands. I don't peck at my food. But,
and Hans, I know you have a lot that you can teach all of us. Would you be willing to stick around?
I would love to. Any chance I have to mess with food, I'm happy to do so.
Well, we're always happy when chefs come to mess around with food with us as well.